2018 was a pretty weird year, though it will be remembered most as one where rude internet people mindlessly complained about cartoons that weren't even out yet using an unrelated term coined by a man who was revealed to be a horrible person just months before. Also, there were some good cartoons from shows both old and new, many of which gave me strong emotional feelings that I will now have to face again. Basically, the same rules apply as last year's list on this topic. Only one episode per show, so no multi-parters or specials, and if I didn't watch it this year, it won't be on the list. So no My Little Pony, Venture Brothers, Voltron, or BoJack Horseman. Luckily, Voltron just ended, so I won't have to worry about covering that anymore, and perhaps that's for the best. With all that said, let's close out the year with my top 10 cartoon episodes of 2018. The best thing about She-Ra and the Princesses of Power on Netflix are the characters. Unlike what its minority of extremely vocal detractors will tell you, the cast isn't defined by their body type or sexual orientation. They're defined by their personalities and relationships, so it's no surprise to me that my favorite episode is one that focuses on all the main characters just hanging out. Episode 8, Princess Prom, has our main trio of Adora, Bo, and Glimmer attending an all-princess ball in the Kingdom of Snows. Glimmer gets jealous when Bo decides to go to the dance with Princess Perfuma instead of going with her as friends, and Adora tries to persuade Princess Frosta to join her rebellion. The problem is that she's a stubborn 11-year-old, with her mind stuck in the kingdom's traditions, and things get even more complicated when Catra shows up, and the sexual tension rises. I mean, truthfully, Adora just interrogates her to see if she's got any scheme up her sleeve, but you can read into some parts as having sexual tension. Now, this episode ain't perfect. There's some by-the-number makeover sequences and a wacky misunderstanding between Adora and Princess Frosta. But the real draw is getting to see all the characters they've established over the past 7 episodes interacting, either in casual conversation or intimate confrontation, a lot of which is honestly pretty funny. Glimmer's subplot with Bo is cliche, but I do like how Glimmer is called out for being clingy. The spotlight is also given to Scorpia in this episode, a princess aligned with the evil horde out of necessity, furthering one of my favorite themes in the show, that the bad guys are more misled than truly evil. Princess Prom is a fairly fun and relaxed episode of She-Ra that lets the best qualities of the series shine enough that they can overpower the more frustrating elements that the episode brings, as well as other weird things in the show, like why the opening credits use the same font as Futurama does. I haven't kept up with We Bare Bears in a couple of years, so when I jumped into seasons 3 and 4 this year, I'm happy to say that it's still very clever and charming. It certainly has gotten weirder, and episodes that center around the baby bears and 90s celebrity guest stars are much more common, like ones that make me say,
"Hey, wait a minute, aren't you Steve from Smash Mouth?"
Yeah, I am.
Really?
Yeah.
Above all, We Bare Bears still makes me laugh and entertains me, and it even touched my heart a bit in the episode Hurricane Hal. Each of the 3 bears gets into their own adventures as a storm begins to brew. Grizz helps a group of Girl Scouts during a kite-flying incident, Panda and Charlie get stuck in a car with a bunch of forest animals, and Chloe and Ice Bear go underneath the city to stay dry. Each story is very straightforward, but they're all beautifully built up. When the climax comes, we reach one of the most serious moments We Bare Bears has ever had. Yet it doesn't feel overly dramatic, and does not completely sacrifice the tone that the episode, or the series, has already built up. The narration provided by the philosophical, but unkempt, minor character Professor Lampwick, and the beautiful soundtrack that accompanies this scene makes it feel as if the whole world is slowing down at the same time, furthering the episode's somewhat cheesy main theme that everything is connected. The ending is masterfully crafted, and it alone makes Hurricane Hal worth a watch. This episode was even nominated for Outstanding Short-Form Animated Program at the Emmys this year, though it was nominated alongside a half-hour episode of Teen Titans Go that didn't even fit the criteria to be nominated. I guess that's not really a valid reason to watch it, so just do it because I said so. I feel kinda bad for The Amazing World of Gumball. As its final season arrives at its last quarter, it seems as though no one really pays attention to it unless it has a random bit or episode with meta humor. The stories and comedy of Season 6 have honestly been pretty good by the standards of the show. It's not as reliant on shock humor as Season 5 was, but the occasional real-world commentary seems more forced than ever. Nearly every time they do it, it's just, wow, isn't that thing in the real world bad? Bet you didn't expect a cartoon to say that.
Corned beef.
This can be opened by women of reasonable intelligence with limited male supervision?
Well, they're from the 60s. But look, only 20 cents for the whole pallet. I guess times were easier then. If you're a man and not a minority and more comfortable with the constant threat of nuclear annihilation. How things have changed, huh?
As cool as it is that Gumball has basically become this generation's Simpsons, there's very few episodes that really make this new direction the show has been crawling towards work within its signature style. Although I think the episode The Faith achieves this in its final act. Most of the episode is setup, and to its credit, it plays around with the town of Elmore losing its color, with objects blending into the background and people getting various items mixed up.
Excited for our blind date and first kiss. I'll be the one wearing gray. Huh?
It turns out that the reason behind the monochrome setting is because do-gooder Alan has lost his faith in humanity, prompting Gumball and Darwin to sing a song to cheer him up. This musical number is able to have a pessimistic outlook on humanity and the future while still promoting an uplifting message. Life is filled with problems, but you can't let all of them stop you from trying to make the world a better place. It's both funny and honest, but not too negative, making it a perfect kind of message for its target demographic. Hopefully, The Amazing World of Gumball will keep up this kind of positive spirit when the series comes to a close next year. More of this, and less of characters who look like Donald Trump only for the sake of looking like Donald Trump. This is not a dig at Trump. This character design is just atrocious. In 2019, the Scooby-Doo franchise will celebrate its 50th anniversary. And though not too much has been released from the series in the years leading up to it, much of it has been aimed at longtime fans. Whether it's the crossover that OKKO did with the characters from the 80s Ghoul School movie, the announcement of a direct-to-digital finale for The 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo, and the strangest of all, a crossover with CW's mystery drama, Supernatural. The Scooby-Natural crossover episode both celebrates and deconstructs the Scooby-Doo formula. Sam, Dean, and Castiel are sucked into the animated world, and have to help the Mystery Inc. gang solve a mystery to escape. But they don't fall into a generic episode. They actually end up in a warped version of the Scooby-Doo Where Are You episode, A Night of Fright is No Delight. It actually sticks very close to its inspiration, except the ghost here is real, and he bumps up the age rating a bit.
Jinkies! Jeepers!
Zoinks! Ruh-roh! Son of a...
Scooby-Natural is a really great parody because it honors the tone of the franchise. The Mystery Inc. gang is entirely in character. We see them play off the Supernatural cast, and also see them react to their whole perspective on ghost hunting getting turned on its side, none of which would have worked as well if the characters' personality traits were exaggerated. The special also pokes fun at the campiness and low budget of the 1969 series, but never outright mocks it. This reminds me a lot of what Scooby-Doo was trying to be in the late 90s. It's got a tone akin to the movies from that era, like Zombie Island and Witch's Ghost, where it tries to be a little edgier, but doesn't lose sight of the franchise that it's a part of. I can't speak of how good Scooby-Natural is as a fan of Supernatural, but I had a blast with very little knowledge going in. The only downside that I found was the very convoluted conclusion, which while fun at parts, kind of came out of nowhere. But even with that in mind, this is a very good special, and hopefully the Scooby-Doo franchise will continue to take risks like this. And if we get even more weird crossovers, I'm completely game for it. While this isn't the time to discuss the recent and tragic passing of Steven Hillenburg, Season 11 of SpongeBob SquarePants was pretty good. It was a gamble to keep the show fresh, and while sometimes this resulted in dull or unbalanced outings, other episodes were some of the most inventive from the series' 19-year run. Enter Karen's Virus, where Plankton sends SpongeBob into the mainframe of his computer wife to dispose of a creature corrupting her circuits. The premise is not too complicated, and it's kind of similar to a musical segment they did all the way back in Atlantis SquarePants, but this time, the episode really makes the most out of its concept. Karen's internal systems are rendered with slick and stylized CGI backgrounds, and are filled with creative locations and characters, like her ideal versions of Plankton and the Krusty Krab crew. So much detail was poured into shaping the setting, like how all of the memories in Karen's memory banks are specific Plankton and Karen clips pulled from past episodes. A bit of a breakneck pace is employed to fit everything into 11 minutes, but neither the comedy nor the stakes are sacrificed. There's also a very satisfying conclusion here, something that has has always been a bit of a problem for SpongeBob. The trope of cartoon characters entering technology or the internet has been done time and time again. But Karen's virus has a unique and satisfying energy to it, and that makes this episode quite rewatchable. The Time Mice, episode 8 of the Netflix series Hilda, has a somewhat standard plot formula behind it, but its strong sense of characterization and atmosphere make it my personal favorite part of a great first season. In trying to help her friend David and her mother have more luck in their lives, Hilda places an enchantment on them that she copied out of a book of spells. Everything's pretty hunky-dory until Hilda begins to steal the souls of her loved ones, since she didn't read the fine print of the spell that she cast. You can predict the direction of the plot fairly early on, but the episode ultimately succeeds because it puts the motivations and personalities of its characters first. How much Hilda has been shown to care for her friends justifies why she would act so rash with casting the spell, and the sequence where she does realize her mistake is made humorous through the excitement that Hilda's elf Alpha shows when he obsesses over the footnotes and appendixes that Hilda missed. His glasses are adorable as well. The way the plot concludes is also quite satisfying, with an ending that has a nice amount of tense action and some striking colors and effects that keep things interesting visually. I also enjoyed this episode for its music. I'm not quite sure why, but I really love whenever cartoons include licensed songs from obscure or indie artists to set the tone. And here, the use of Back to You by the Twerps really makes the montage halfway through more entertaining and memorable than it has any right to be. Not every episode of Hilda is perfect. I think a few have issues with sticking the landing or being entertaining all the way through, but I loved nearly every moment of The Time Mice. It executes a simple episode extremely well, and that's kind of what Hilda does best.
Hilda, I know you meant well, but what were you thinking?
I spent a while in Adventure Time's Land of Ood this year, rewatching the series, and that really helped me prepare for its hour-long finale, Come Along With Me. Not only because the episode leaned heavily on the audience being very familiar with random events from the past 4 seasons, but also because I had come to understand that the series has a very non-linear style of storytelling. This especially applies when it comes to conclusions, and since Adventure Time pretty much always struggles to close out arcs that span more than a miniseries, it all set my expectations for an experience that would put an end to one of this decade's greatest shows. When it's all said and done, I was satisfied with this finale, though I stand by the idea that it would have worked better as a season finale. It's set up fabulously, with an enthralling new framing device and lots of deep implications around the conflict, but the second quarter, while visually and conceptually interesting, is too weird to feel like a necessary detour. All of the stuff later on with Golb is pretty tense and gives nearly all of the cast a memorable moment or two to shine, but there is no good reason for him to be the final antagonist. The episode's rapid pace is also a detriment, as there's very little time for these characters to get truly emotional in their final moments on screen. But for its few faults, the last segment of this episode is fantastic. Time Adventure is an intense ballad, the plot resolution feels bittersweet but satisfying, and the ending montage covers all of its bases and reminds me why I love this show all over again. In some ways, the note the series ends on seems like setup for even more stories, but the way I've seen it, the whole show has always felt like a snapshot into a world rather than a linear plot with a beginning and end. Come Along With Me is flawed in its focus, but personally it sticks the landing in closing out Adventure Time, despite it being quite the non-traditional ending. I would have changed a few things here and there, but it was just a solid episode and a fine note to end on. And you know what they say, will happen, happening happened. That really doesn't have too much to do with my previous statement, I just wanted to say it. Episodes where cartoon characters kind of figure out that they're in a cartoon are fun, but they tend to have little lasting impact on the characters. OKKO, Let's Be Heroes, despite having continuity and story arcs here and there, is far and away the exception to this standard. In the Season 2 episode Your World is an Illusion, a mysterious woman named Hollow Jane exposes the cracks in the layers of the universe to KO. These cracks appear in the form of jokes about simple animation ideals, and errors in layering, camera movements, motion impacts, and props and background effects. OKKO absolutely revels in its animation references, so it has a blast pointing out inconsistencies that one might take for granted.
Do I only have 1, 2, 3, 4 fingers? Why do we call them high fives then?
I know that a lot of people might have expected Crossover Nexus to represent this series on this list, but while that's an incredible tribute to Cartoon Network's history, it's too ambitious for its own good. Your World is an Illusion takes a more introspective approach, and uses its references to illustrate what is essentially an existential crisis for KO, as its structure unravels to the point where he literally faces the fourth wall. I've previously talked about how I'm not a big fan when shows like Adventure Time delve extremely deep into philosophy, but this episode keeps things very light all the way through. It even includes appearances by creator Ian Jones Quartzy's original character from middle school, Rex the Bunny, who yes, you can make as a character in Sonic Forces. In the end, KO learns that even if his world isn't truly real, the relationships that he's formed there are, though he takes this moral at face value.
All of our connections to the world around us create our own personal realities. It's all a matter of perspective.
So, nothing is real, and everything is real?
Exactly.
Then what was the point of any of this?
For an episode all about questioning worldviews, Your World is an Illusion is surprisingly comprehensive with both its animation-themed humor and its more philosophical musings. It's a great showcase of how willing OKKO, Let's Be Heroes, is willing to push its universe to its limits. Beyond a weak episode or two, DuckTales has worked out every kink that I mentioned when covering it a year ago, and has gone above and beyond to subvert its viewers' expectations with both its comedy and plot. There's no better episode to illustrate its high-quality storytelling than the penultimate episode of Season 1, The Last Crash of the Sun Chaser. When on their way to another adventure, Scrooge accidentally crashes Launchpad McDuck's plane, leaving it bouncing atop the edge of a mountain. Meanwhile, Huey, Dewey, and Louie are at the edge of putting together the mystery of what happened to their mother, Della, when the last piece of the puzzle flies out of their hands. Now the Duck siblings need to navigate around the unstable ship without getting caught to solve their mystery once and for all. But despite essentially being a bottle episode, The Last Crash of the Sun Chaser takes the characters on the most thrilling adventure yet. While there is action to be had, most of the tension and suspense comes from the lengths that the Ducks, Dewey in particular, are willing to go for closure on their mother. The climax is truly breathtaking, as the music swells, the sun slowly sets, and the plane shakes as Scrooge chases Dewey on its wings. This intensity only continues as the plot wraps up, where we learn Della's fate. I dare not say any more, but it leads to one of the most emotional animated moments in recent memory. Not only is this reveal foreshadowed throughout the episode, but it also brings the motivations of Scrooge's character full circle from the very first episode. Everything in The Last Crash of the Sun Chaser is satisfyingly well crafted. It not only shattered my expectations for the DuckTales reboot, but it kinda shattered my heart as well. That ending is kind of hard to sit through. Outside of South Park and Star vs. the Forces of Evil, every other show I watched this year was recently covered in my last video, which looked at the best and worst cartoons of 2018. I didn't want too many entries from that list filling up this one, with the exception of Hilda, because I didn't see anyone else talking about my favorite episode. If there were any other episodes or series that you think I should have covered here, or somewhere else on this channel, please give me some suggestions down in the comments, along with some of your worst episodes from this year too. I'll be getting to that video after a certain season review or two. But without further ado, here's my favorite cartoon episode from 2018. Some cartoons are never going to be as good as you want them to be. A creator's vision can sometimes be so specific that not every single one of their ideas will click with their audience. But sometimes, all the pieces come together, and we get an episode that gives you everything you could ever want and more from a show. And for me personally, that episode was Reunited from Steven Universe. Now, to make myself clear, the past two shows I just talked about were both better than this in 2018. There's a good amount of coloring errors in the final stretch. The pacing is very rushed in Acts 2 and 3, leaving elements like the cluster undeveloped, and it also has a minor cliffhanger instead of a full conclusion. However, I love this episode. It's pretty much the climax that the past 5 seasons of this series have been building to, and it delivers on bringing everything together. This is the Super Smash Bros. Ultimate of the show, because everyone is here. Except for Lars, because I guess he's the Waluigi of Steven Universe. Or maybe it's Rose. Every major character gets a moment or two in the sun, not only in battle, but also during Garnet's satisfying wedding and in the catchy opening tune about living in denial. The episode is exhilarating in how much it covers at once. but it still manages to slow down for heartfelt moments all throughout the chaotic action. It's insane how many major plot threads are resolved or touched upon in only 22 minutes. Reunited left me almost speechless when it premiered, and even 5 months later, I feel almost as satisfied with it every time I've watched it, no matter how flawed it may be, and that's why it's number 1 on this list. Honestly, a year ago, I had my doubts that Steven Universe would ever reach the highs that it did back in seasons 1 and 2. And while the little we got of it wasn't completely perfect, it was quite captivating. And Reunited has definitely shot itself up to the top of my list of my favorite episodes from the whole show. I'm glad that because of all these great episodes, the widespread negativity surrounding Steven Universe has died down a bit, and we can finally get back to enjoying this great show for what it is, and not pull poorly formed criticisms out of our why are we still doing this? And that about wraps up this video, and 2018 as a whole. For me personally, this year really has been something else, but for now, I'll just say that I'm very satisfied with the videos I was able to make, and can hardly believe all the great people I've been able to meet and work with, or how much support this little channel has gotten in just 12 months. Just as television animation was this year, things just seem to be getting a little bit bigger and better, and I cannot wait to see what's on the horizon.
I could give you a glimpse now, but it's not pretty. And this is coming from someone who has a burning agitation towards you.
You know what, Timmy? I have absolutely no idea how you're able to get a glimpse into the future, but bring it on.
Future.
What's up, gamers? I'm Pickle Nick!